The summer heat hung heavy over Louisville, Kentucky, as dawn broke across the Ohio River. In a modest home on Grand Avenue, Cassius Clay Sr. gently shook his son awake. "Time to rise, Junior. No champion ever slept past sunrise." At 12 years old, Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. already showed the determination that would one day reshape the boxing world. That morning in 1954, no one could have predicted the journey ahead, the glory, the controversy, the battles both inside and outside the ring. Years later, Muhammad Ali, no longer answering to his slave name, stood alone in his training camp in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania. Now 33, his once lightning-fast reflexes had begun their inevitable decline. The mirror reflected a face marked by countless battles, eyes that had witnessed both adoration and hatred from a divided nation. His most dangerous opponent wasn't across the ring anymore. It was time itself. Ali wrapped his hands, a ritual performed thousands of times before. Each layer of gauze covered knuckles that had changed history. As he worked, memories flickered through his mind. The Olympic gold in Rome, the shock defeat of Sonny Liston, the 3 years stolen from his prime when he refused to step forward for the draft. And always, always, there was Joe Frazier. If you felt anything from this story, even something small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. Their rivalry transcended sport. They were opposing forces. Ali, the outspoken, poetic rebel who challenged America's racial orthodoxy. Frazier, the relentless worker, the establishment's champion when Ali was exiled from boxing. Their first fight at Madison Square Garden in 1971 had been dubbed the fight of the century, and Frazier had won, handing Ali his first professional defeat. That loss had cut deeper than any punch. But it wasn't the loss that haunted Ali. It was what came after, the words. Ali had called Frazier an Uncle Tom, a gorilla, questioning his blackness, his intelligence, his very humanity, all for publicity, all for psychological advantage. At least, that's what Ali had told himself at the time. Now, with the third and likely final chapter of their trilogy approaching, the thriller in Manila, Ali wondered if he had gone too far. The hatred between them felt real now, no longer just promotion. Something had changed in Frazier's eyes when they met. The respect that underlies even the fiercest sporting rivalries had been poisoned. In his quiet moments, Ali admitted to himself what he couldn't say publicly. Joe Frazier might be the one man he couldn't beat, not consistently, not definitively. Smokin' Joe had an iron will that matched Ali's own. While Ali had always claimed to be the greatest, privately he knew Frazier was perhaps the only man who could legitimately challenge that claim. Manila would settle it, one way or another. But neither man realized the true cost they would pay under the Philippine sun, or how that brutal contest would bind them together forever in ways neither could imagine. October 1st, 1975. The Philippine Coliseum buzzed with 25,000 voices, a deafening roar that seemed to make the very air vibrate. President Ferdinand Marcos and his wife Imelda sat ringside, lending an air of political gravity to the sporting spectacle. Outside, the tropical heat was oppressive, but inside, the atmosphere was nearly unbearable, both from the temperature and the tension. Muhammad Ali entered first, his entourage surrounding him like a human shield. At 33, questions about his decline had begun to surface after uneven performances against Chuck Wepner and Joe Bugner. Doubts that Ali loudly dismissed in public but quietly wrestled with at night. He needed this victory, not just for his legacy, but to silence the whispers that perhaps the greatest was no longer the best. When Joe Frazier emerged, the contrast was stark. No elaborate entrance, just Smokin' Joe in his simple robe, eyes fixed forward with the single-minded focus of a predator. At 31, Frazier too was past his absolute prime, having lost his title to George Foreman. But against Ali, Frazier always found another gear, fueled by a deep, personal resentment that transcended sport. In the center of the ring, referee Carlos Padilla gave his instructions. The fighters didn't look at each other. They couldn't. The hatred was too raw, too real. Ali continued his psychological warfare until the very last moment. "You don't have it, Joe. You're nothing. This time, I'm going to put you away for good." Frazier simply stared, his silence more unnerving than any words could be. The bell rang, and what followed would become legend. The early rounds belonged to Ali, who moved with a grace that belied his age, peppering Frazier with jabs and right hands that snapped the challenger's head back. "Ghost him, Ali!" shouted Drew. "Bundini, Brown from the corner. Dance! Show him who's king!" But Joe Frazier had not come to Manila to be anyone's subject. By the 5th round, he began to close the distance, trapping Ali against the ropes, punishing him with hooks to the body that echoed through the arena. Each blow seemed to carry the weight of all the insults, all the humiliation Ali had heaped upon him over the years. By the 10th round, the fight had transformed into something beyond sport, a test of will, of character, of the very essence of both men. Ali later said it was the closest thing to death he had ever experienced. The temperature inside the arena had climbed to 107 degrees. Both men were dehydrated, exhausted, their bodies failing them even as their spirits refused to yield. In the corner before the 11th round, Angelo Dundee wiped the sweat and blood from Ali's face. "You're letting him take over, Muhammad. You gotta move, baby. You gotta dance." But Ali could barely nod. His legs felt like they were filled with concrete. His lungs burned with each breath. Across the ring, Frazier's face was a mask of determination through the swelling. His left eye was nearly closed from Ali's precise right hands, but he kept coming forward, a force of nature that could not be denied. Eddie Futch, Frazier's trainer, applied ice to the swelling, knowing that his fighter was running on pure heart. The championship rounds were a testament to human endurance. Neither man should have been able to continue, yet neither would surrender. In the 13th, Ali found reserves of strength that seemed supernatural, staggering Frazier with combinations that would have felled any other opponent. But Frazier absorbed the punishment and fired back with hooks that made Ali's legs quiver. Before the 15th and final round, the atmosphere in Frazier's corner was grim. Eddie Futch looked at his fighter, at the grotesque swelling that had completely closed both eyes, and made the decision that would haunt him forever. "It's over, Joe. No one will forget what you did here today." "I can see him, Eddie," Frazier protested, his voice barely audible. "I can beat him." "The fight's over, Joe," Futch said firmly, signaling to the referee. Across the ring, Ali raised his arms in victory, then promptly collapsed onto his stool. "It was like death," he gasped to Dundee. "Closest thing to dying that I know of." Neither man left the arena under their own power that night. Both were rushed to hospitals, their bodies pushed beyond all reasonable limits. The hatred that had fueled their trilogy had extracted a terrible price from both warriors. But something else had happened in that ring, something neither man could yet recognize through the fog of exhaustion and pain. A bond had been forged in that crucible of suffering, one that would take years to fully reveal itself. The aftermath of Manila cast long shadows over both men. For Ali, victory had come at a devastating cost. "I'm so tired," he told the press from his hospital bed. "I'm just glad it's over. Me and Joe, we've done marvelous things together." But the physical toll was impossible to ignore. Ali's personal physician later confirmed that his fighter had suffered significant damage, kidney issues that required hospitalization, and neurological effects that, in retrospect, may have been early signs of the Parkinson's disease that would eventually claim his health. For Joe Frazier, defeat was bitter medicine. He remained in a Manila hospital for weeks, his injuries more severe than initially reported. The physical wounds would heal. The emotional ones festered. "I hit him with punches that would have knocked down the walls of a city," Frazier said months later. "Man just wouldn't go down." When asked about Ali's post-fight respect, Frazier's response was curt, "Talk is cheap." Throughout the late 1970s, their paths diverged. Ali continued fighting well past his prime, suffering increasingly one-sided defeats to younger fighters like Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick before finally retiring in 1981. Frazier attempted a brief comeback, but retired after a second loss to George Foreman in 1976. While Ali remained in the public eye, an international icon whose fame transcended boxing, Frazier retreated to Philadelphia, opening a gym and training fighters, including his son, Marvis. The bitterness lingered. In rare interviews, Frazier would speak of Ali with undisguised contempt. "And I don't want to talk about him no more than I have to," he told a journalist in 1984. "Man took my heart, took my mind, then he took my title." Ali's health deteriorated more rapidly than anyone expected. By 1984, his speech had noticeably slowed, his once fluid movements became rigid, and the diagnosis of Parkinson's syndrome was made public. The greatest talker in sports history was being silenced by a disease that attacked the very qualities that had made him exceptional: his speed, his reflexes, his voice. For years, Frazier showed little sympathy. "God's punishing him," he told reporters in 1996. "He's got Joe Frazier disease." The comment shocked many, revealing the depth of hurt that still resided in Frazier's heart after more than 2 decades. Yet beneath the public animosity, subtle shifts were occurring. When asked about Ali lighting the Olympic torch at the 1996 Atlanta Games, Frazier admitted, "They picked the right man. He was always a great showman." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement, a crack in the wall of resentment. The true breakthrough came unexpectedly in 2002. HBO was producing a documentary about the thriller in Manila and arranged separate interviews with both fighters. The producer, sensing an opportunity for reconciliation, asked Frazier if he would be willing to meet with Ali. After a long pause, Frazier nodded once. On a cool autumn day in New York City, they met in a hotel suite, 2 old warriors, both showing the ravages of time and their profession. Ali, then 60, moved slowly, his face masked by Parkinson's. Frazier, 58, was more physically robust, but carried emotional wounds that had never properly healed. Those present described an awkward silence as the 2 legends regarded each other across decades of rivalry. Ali spoke first, his words slurred but understandable. "Joe, you as pretty as ever." Frazier didn't smile. "You still running that mouth, huh?" But something shifted in that room. Perhaps it was seeing Ali's condition up close, or perhaps it was the simple human recognition that life was too short for such enduring hatred. Before they parted, Frazier clasped Ali's trembling hand in both of his. "We did some damage, didn't we?" Frazier said quietly. Ali nodded, his eyes showing the sharp intelligence that remained trapped in his failing body. "Couldn't have done it without you, Joe." It wasn't a Hollywood moment of tearful reconciliation, but for men like Frazier and Ali, it represented something perhaps more authentic: respect. The foundation for forgiveness was finally being laid. January 9th, 2009. The occasion was Muhammad Ali's 67th birthday celebration at the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville. Despite the advanced stage of his Parkinson's, Ali insisted on attending, supported by his wife Lonnie and an entourage of medical professionals who remained discreetly in the background. The guest list included boxing royalty, celebrities, and political figures, a testament to Ali's continued relevance as a cultural icon even as his health declined. But one name surprised many: Joe Frazier had accepted the invitation. At 75, Frazier moved more slowly than in his prime, but still carried himself with the distinctive rolling gait of a lifelong boxer. He arrived without fanfare, accompanied only by his son, Marvis. The room quieted as he made his way to the table where Ali sat. Lonnie Ali rose to greet him. "Joe, thank you for coming. It means the world to Muhammad." Frazier nodded, then turned his attention to his former rival. Ali's condition had worsened significantly since their meeting 7 years earlier. His hands trembled continuously, his facial expression largely frozen, though his eyes remained alert and engaged. What happened next wasn't planned or choreographed for the cameras. Joe Frazier reached out and took Ali's shaking hand in his. "Happy birthday, champ," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. Then, leaning closer so only Ali and those nearest could hear, he added, "I forgive you, Muhammad, for everything. We're good." Ali's eyes filled with tears, one of the few emotional expressions his condition still permitted. He pulled Frazier closer with surprising strength and embraced him. The room erupted in applause, many witnesses wiping away tears of their own. Later that evening, Frazier took the microphone, something he rarely did in public settings. "I want to say something about this man," he began, gesturing toward Ali. "We had our differences. Lord knows we had our differences." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. "But I want the world to know something. There would be no Joe Frazier without Muhammad Ali, and there would be no Muhammad Ali without Joe Frazier." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "What we did together. Those fights, they belong to both of us, and I'm proud of that. Proud to have been part of something that was bigger than both of us." The reconciliation wasn't just symbolic. In the years that followed, Frazier became a regular visitor to Ali's home. Their children, who had grown up hearing about the bitter rivalry, witnessed something their younger selves could never have imagined, their fathers laughing together, watching old fights, completing a circle that had begun in anger but ended in mutual respect. When Joe Frazier died on November 7th, 2011, from liver cancer, Ali, despite his deteriorating health, insisted on attending the funeral in Philadelphia. Supported by assistants, he made his way to the front of the church to pay his respects. No speeches were possible given his condition, but none were necessary. His presence spoke volumes. In a statement released afterward, Ali said simply, "The world has lost a great champion. I will always remember Joe with respect and admiration. My sympathy goes out to his family and those who loved him." 4.5 years later, when Ali himself passed away on June 3rd, 2016, Marvis Frazier represented the Frazier family at his funeral. "Our fathers started as enemies but ended as brothers," Marvis told reporters. That's the real legacy, not just the fights, but the forgiveness. The story of Ali and Frazier reminds us of boxing's unparalleled capacity to reveal character. Inside the ring, stripped to their essence, fighters cannot hide who they truly are. Ali and Frazier showed us brilliance, courage, and flaws in equal measure. Their rivalry transcended sport precisely because it exposed so much raw humanity. But their greatest achievement wasn't any championship or any single fight. It was the journey from hatred to reconciliation, proof that even the deepest wounds can heal, that forgiveness is possible even after decades of bitterness. In a world that often seems increasingly divided, the example set by these two warriors offers a powerful lesson. If Ali and Frazier could find peace after Manila, perhaps there's hope for all of us to overcome our differences and recognize our shared humanity. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hand to reach people like you who feel, who get emotional, who truly live. If this touched you, give back, comment, subscribe, come be part of this family with me until the next video.